Hello and welcome to another episode. So today we're going to be looking at a video game that I received from a Facebook user. He goes by the name of Josh Moog, like the cow with a G. And he sent me Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. As you can see, the outside is pretty dirty. Apparently we get some graphical glitches or functionality just not working the way this Nintendo game should work. So what we're going to do is we'll pop it in the Nintendo here, see what it looks like, and diagnose the issue. So we'll just slide this puppy in and see what kind of results we get. As you can see, there are some graphic issues here. We have some distortion and maybe some weird scaling issues. Looks like horizontal or vertical. Could be bad, as you can see. So let's start up a game here. And see what everything else looks like. I mean, the title screen doesn't look bad. This screen doesn't look that bad. Again, it doesn't look terrible. But we're already seeing some strange artifacts happening here. Look to the left side of the screen as I walk. It's like we're receiving data that's mirrored. Opposite of what we should have. It's like coming in too soon. It's not actually opposite. And now you can see while I walk to the left, we have that filling in as well. So yeah, there's definitely some kind of issue here. I'm thinking it's probably one of the contacts is probably dirty or not communicating with the chip. Okay, so let's crack this puppy open and see if we can't figure out what is causing the issue with this video game. It's probably just Dracula's Curse, but we'll see. Okay, there she is. The Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse game. Let's pop this open and see what the PCB looks like inside. I'll grab my trusty security bit. This is a 3.8 millimeter security bit. These off to the side. And let's look at this thing. The pins look in pretty rough shape. I don't know what that is. A piece of debris. I mean, they're cleaned surface-wise, but it looks like there's a lot of tarnish. Let's see this side. Yeah, we'll take a look at these pins and the connections and maybe see what's going on. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my multimeter, which is this little guy. And I'm going to put the setting on the continuity test. Basically what that tells us is if there is a direct link between two connections. So if I am to take my two probes and touch them together, we hear that high-pitched sound, which means we have a connection. So basically if you had an electrical connection from point A to point B, to check to see if that was a complete connection, you would test each end and get that tone to let us know that the connection's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my probes here and I'm just going to test the continuity between the connection where it plugs into the socket on the NES and to where it ends up at its first junction on the board here, just so I can test if there's any breaks between the starting point of where it connects and the second, or I should say the first point of entry onto the PCB from the main connection to the first point entry is what we'll check. So continuity is good there. So we'll just go along the board. So I see this is the first one I'm going to check, and I'm just going to go right down. That's good. You can see those connect underneath of this protective layer. You can see the trace. Go to the next one, which is up here. And the next one. And the next one. Oh. And we don't have any continuity to check there. That should give us a tone. Which means there's probably a little break in here that we can repair pretty easily. We'll check the other ones. Well, we know that pin 22 right here doesn't have a connection between here and that first entry spot. So there's probably a little break in that trace right there. Let's check the others. Sometimes if it doesn't have a lead right here to probe, you know, you can kind of feel around these other pins and find it that way. So this one I had to check further up in the board here. This one, big and thick, we should have no problem with that. And check the back side. And I'll just speed this along. You're just following the trace with your eye. Okay, now that I know that the issue with this game is probably that pin 22 being disconnected from the board, so I'm going to clean this up first and prepare it for some new solder that I will use to bridge the gap between the contact and the pin 22. Yeah, so this is already really clean. So what I like to do is I'm going to mask off the protectant here. And the reason I like doing this is just so any additional scrubbing that I do does not harm these thin traces up here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some 2000 grit sandpaper. Everybody cringes at the word sandpaper. I'm going to take this and we're going to polish these up. Okay, so with that masked off properly, I'll take my Q-tip and I'm just going to wet this sandpaper with some rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to come along these edges here. Lightly, you don't have to go crazy. I'm just trying to get it so it's nice and even. We don't have any blemishes. You don't want to clean too much. You just want a nice shine that's pretty even. Rag and wipe that excess off. And that's pretty good. I could go use a little more on the edge. Here's what we have now. Much more even shine in comparison to that. I think that looks pretty nice. I can reuse my tape on this end. Just going to mask off the layer protectant. Q-tip and wet sandpaper. Okay, so we have that shined up pretty well. Nice and even, fairly even anyway. Same with this side. And now what we have to do next is fix the connection on pin 22. So our connection from here to here is a problem. So there's probably a little break in the trace that goes right in this area, right there. Right there is probably a break in that trace. So I'm going to scratch some of this protectant off and then just do a little solder jump. So I have my razor blade out here. I'm just going to expose some of this copper. So I've scratched off a portion of the copper right there. And I'm going to do it to the trace as well. You want to scrape in the direction that the trace is flowing. Don't go against the grain go with the trace, or you're just going to lift the trace from the board, and we don't want to do that. So that's our trace exposed. You can see I got a little close and I scraped off the 2 on the 21 on the next pin over, but that's no big deal. I'm going to use some solder flux. I'm going to use a very little amount. You really don't need much here. Quite a small connection. And I'll just take my solder here, and I'm going to bridge that little gap with some solder. We'll tap like that. And now we will check the connection between here and this pin. It looks like we don't quite have it yet. I was trying to avoid using a wire, but I think that's what we'll have to do. Make a little jump. So I took 2 strands out, the one sticking up, and that's what I'm going to use for my gap. So I just rested my little wire that I've clipped. I'm just going to place one end where I want it. I'll hold this end down. And make it solder. Get that to stick. Then bend it up. Right there. Solder that on. Maybe a little bit of new stuff. I'll just put it on the end of my soldering iron. And we're going to tap it. We'll check our continuity. In here. And there, which is great. And now we just want to remove that excess wire right here. Use some of our rubbing alcohol to clean up that flux residue. So this should be our repair here. That little jump that I've made should fix our game the way we want. I'm going to clean this up one last time. And what I'll do is I'll tell you why that probably happened. This is another reason you should always keep your cases nice and snug. So when you have these in here, like that, this piece of plastic right here, it's never a perfect fit. So if there's any moving back and forth of the cartridge with it loose, it's gonna wear out those thin little traces on the PCB. As a precaution, I'm going to put some Scotch tape on this. Keep those traces covered. And that can go pretty high. excess. Do the same on this side. So that is just giving us an extra layer of protection. Right there. Take out the excess. I'm going to clean up this cartridge case some. Everybody knows how to do that, so we'll skip that part. Well, there it is. We're partially cleaned on the outside. The inside has been resoldered, and it's time to bring her back upstairs and see if it'll work once again. Let's go, shall we? Okay, so we're back upstairs with Castlevania 3. I'm going to give it a test run and see if our graphic glitches have gone. Let there be life. So far it looks a lot better than it did. Now we have to actually scroll to the castle. And there's our title screen, and that is moving properly the way it should. Let's start this and see if we still have graphic bugs. That looks good, just like before, probably because we didn't have any scrolling happening. So as you can see, the stage is no longer preloading, so to speak, on each side depending on where I walk. Everything looks nice. There's no more graphic distortion. So I'd have to say that this is a successful repair. I fixed Josh's Castlevania 3 because one of the contacts, the trace, was just not working anymore. It was broken. Well, Josh, there you have it. Your Castlevania 3 is now back in working order. We just had to repair that trace on pin 22 that was broken by adding some extra wire. We polished up the pins a bit more. We put a little protective layer of tape down to prevent any further damage from the cartridge case rubbing against the PCB itself. So I'll get that shipped out to you ASAP. And until next time, thanks for watching. And if you have anything broken, say a Nintendo game, any game for that matter, maybe a console or a controller, let me know. Contact me through Facebook or YouTube, and please subscribe, tell your friends, and until next time, we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.